Welcome everybody to our next installment of the Rubin Dream Job webinar series. My name is Danny Rubin. I'm the founder of Rubin. We provide online resources for employability skills and business etiquette. Teachers, can I see some hands? How many of your students will email you like they're sending you a text message? Any hands up for emails that look like text messages? Any Zoom hands? So what we do is give students practical guides to learn how to communicate appropriately for college and career opportunities. And we talk about different jobs and why communication skills are really important in those jobs. And we'll talk about that today with our special guest, Stephanie Lemelle, an occupational therapist in Virginia Beach, Virginia, not far from us. Stephanie, thank you for your time in the middle of your very busy day. We appreciate it so much. We will get to you in just a few minutes.
Okay.
And we'll dive into your career and the work that you're doing in the hospital, even as late as this morning. So we'll get there. Before we do that, we're going to share some resources. Many of you who join our sessions, who's here for the first time? Any hands up if you're first time in one of our webinars? So what we like to do is give out resources from our company's curriculum, which is called Emerge, that CTE programs use around the country. We give some resources from our curriculum that you can use with your students in your school. And I'll share my screen. And this time we kind of jump around in our topics. This is one from last school year. We're bringing it back because it's been a while. We've created a free Google Drive folder of resources to help students handle failure. And let me show you what's in there. Learning how to respond to an email if you don't land the internship or the job. Learning how to reply back if someone doesn't answer your email the first time. No, they don't hate you. They may have just been busy. All right. How to ask someone for honest feedback. How to tell a story of a time you've overcome a challenge. And how to improve how you look in the eyes of others, like through a public speaking opportunity. So if you'd like these resources, I'll tell you in just a second how to get them. Also, we always give this other document out, which is an online presentation checklist, which is a one-page document of some quick tips on how to give effective online presentations. If students have presentations coming up in the spring, it's a good document to leave in the classroom or on the computer of learning how to prepare and deliver an excellent, engaging online presentation. If you'd like these resources, whether you've been with us before or you're brand new, here's what you do. Some of you already know. Go to the chat right now, please. Type the word interested and your email address. This is for the teachers here. Interested and your email address. And those of you who are new to our community, what we like to do is have a short conversation with you on tomorrow to help you understand how to access these topics and how to share them out, not just with your class, but with your school, to spread this way beyond today's webinar. And you can be the person in your school to share these messages. So your name and your email and the word, just your email and the word interested. And we will send an invite on your calendar if you're new to us for tomorrow. And you can tell us if the time works or not. It's no big deal to move it around, but we love to have that human conversation so you can really get to know who we are. Okay, now, continue to do that. Continue to put your name and email. It's perfectly fine. I want to mention we have one final webinar for the fall semester. It's going to be on December 13th. We're going to be exploring the world of a psychologist. It'll be 1:30 in the afternoon Eastern time, 10:30 Pacific. And it'll be with Dr. Stephanie Lemelle from Las Vegas about her work as a clinical psychologist. So please join us then. You'll see an email about it in the coming days. Two last things, and we'll get into our conversation. If you're watching this on a recording, you can also have the resources I just mentioned. Just send us an email to the email in red with the subject line, Rubin Failure Resources. And finally, everybody here today, live with us, will receive a certificate in the morning for being here. A printable certificate for the students. You can fill their name in and show proof that they were here. Okay, so I'll jump back out
Awesome.
and we'll bring in our special guest, Stephanie Lemelle. Again, thank you for
Mhm.
making time in your day. Let's
Yeah.
start by telling the students what you do in your job and your career path, how you went from the community college you started talking about and how it led you to different medical roles and into the one you're doing now.
Okay. So initially, I was a certified nurse's assistant. So I started there. Then I went to Tidewater Community College. I became a CODA. I was an occupational therapy assistant for 7 years. I've worked at the hospital collectively 18 years. So 7 years, 4 years as a nurse care partner. So a nurse care partner in the hospital is a CNA. So I started there. Then I became a unit secretary. I became a CODA, went back to school 7 years later. So now I'm an occupational therapy therapist.
And what is a CODA?
It's an occupational therapy assistant.
That's just like another name for it.
They're occupational therapy assistants, and the C is CODA for certified. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So COTA.
OTA, yes.
Okay.
So we call them
Um,
CODAs for OTAs.
okay, got it. And I want to point out for especially the teachers and students who are new to our webinars, we are learning about different jobs, but we're also learning employability skills. And what I just did is that I heard a term I had not heard before, CODA.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped and asked Stephanie to explain that term to me. And I didn't just let it go by because I was too afraid to ask about something I didn't know. I said, do you mind explaining what that stands for?
Mm-hmm.
And so throughout our webinar today, we're going to be learning about her job and also the types of communication skills that show that I'm truly interested in her work. Stephanie, did you mind that I asked you to describe or explain CODA? Did that bother you?
No, not at all, because that's what we do in the hospital. If you don't know, we want you to ask. So yeah, always feel free to ask.
Thank you.
Definitely.
That's
Mm-hmm.
great. And I want the students and teachers to really understand that if there's what it shows, Stephanie, is that I'm actually interested and I want
Mm-hmm.
to know more. And
And
I'm
there's
not
a lot of abbreviations out there that you don't know, so you definitely need to ask. So,
yes, yes, exactly. Especially when you're working with somebody's health
oh yeah.
and you want to make sure that you don't make any mistakes because you were too afraid to ask and then something
Mm-hmm.
goes wrong. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so now you've gone through a lot of different roles and schooling
Mm-hmm.
and time, and now you're an occupational therapist.
Yes.
And so even just this morning, you said you'd already seen 5 patients.
Mm-hmm.
So think about, as much as I'm sure it's all kind of a blur, but think about the ones you saw this morning. What are some things you were doing with people in occupational therapy?
So I'm on the oncology floor. So we're stationed on floors for 3 months. So we rotate every 3 months. So today, this morning, I put someone in the shower, transferred a patient to the bathroom, exercise. I do music therapy. So I did Zumba with a patient. Um, yeah, just whatever. It just depends on your patient and the intervention you use. Yeah, so exercise, showering, all self care stuff. So a
Hmm.
lot.
And you said oncology, so these are patients who are battling cancer. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that is
Okay.
correct.
And you said you're working through 3 different units or areas of the hospital, or 3 months at a time. What are the different areas of the hospital where you work?
Okay, so on our fourth floor, there's 4 floors to our hospital. The fourth floor is med surge. So those are your general surgical patients. The third floor is our CVA, so our stroke patients. We have a step down unit, so it's critical care, step down from critical care. The second floor, we have cardiac and we have oncology, and we also have orthopedics floor. And then part of the south second floor is our ICU, intensive care. The first floor is the ED.
And what is
So
ED?
all
What is ED?
emergency department.
Emergency department.
Hmm.
Okay. So,
Or
and
the
you,
ER. Some people call it the ER,
ER.
emergency. Hmm.
Okay. So, and you might find yourself on any given day or month on one of those different floors.
Yes.
So you can
Yes.
kind of float around and do whatever is needed depending
Hmm.
on where they station you. Okay.
Hmm.
As we continue this conversation, I want to welcome the teachers and students to start putting your own questions in the Q&A area along the bottom of Zoom. So please start putting your questions. And when you do, include your name and your school, so we can give you proper credit when I ask the question to our guests. So please start putting whatever you want to know about Stephanie's job. And she's already given us a lot to think about. I mean, just today, the number of things she's doing, helping people go to the bathroom, do exercise, like all kinds of, I mean, so when you arrive at a patient's room, do you know what they need already, or how does that get relayed to you, like before you walk in there, like what you're going to be expected to do?
Well, I have a basic understanding of what their deficits are, be it like balance, endurance. So I already, when I do a chart review, I look at the medical record to see what they're dealing with, and I can already assess their level of strength. So when I go into the room, I give it's a choice. What would you like to do today? Would you like to work on your strength? Are we working on balance? It's a combination. So my interventions in the hospital are very flexible. So it just depends on where the patient level of assistance is needed and what we're going to work on. And
Okay.
it's all about choice.
I see. Interesting. All about choice. So ultimately you're there to help them with whatever they are willing to do.
Their purpose, whatever they're connected to.
Okay. Okay,
Most
great. We have some good questions coming through. I want to ask one thing first before I forget. You told me that you worked the day after Thanksgiving.
Yes,
And you worked the entire hospital.
I did.
Tell me how many occupational therapists were in the hospital that day versus how many are there on a regular day.
Well, the day after Thanksgiving, there were two of us, but on a regular day, there's eight of us. So we covered the entire hospital, two OTs. So
Wow.
it was a definitely a roller skate day is what we call it. Put your roller skates on and roll with it. So.
Roller skate day. Let's everybody who has our worksheet, write that down. That's a great little term. So let's look a little bit further at that situation. So how many patients do you think you saw in one day, as only two of you were there for the whole hospital? How many do you think you reached?
Well, it was a long day. So I treated and eval 13 patients.
13 over how many hours?
Oh, that was over 9 hours.
9 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about this in terms of students too. When you're working, how many teachers, how many of you are helping students with their resume? Anybody helping with resumes right now? Can I see some hands for any resumes or job applications, cover letters? So think about what she just said. She could have written on a resume, she works with patients throughout the hospital, period. But what if we add some numbers to that line? So for example, she could say on one particular Thanksgiving holiday, I was one of only two OTs for the entire hospital, saw 13 patients over a 9-hour span. Instead of just saying work in a busy hospital, right? So think about how much differently that line sounds when you add the numbers, the specifics to the situation, right? Like Stephanie, when you really say it out loud, it's like, wow, I really did do a lot in 9 hours. That's a lot of patients to see in one day. And I want students to realize, think about your own life, think about your own experiences. Where can you add numbers to your own experiences to stand out instead of just saying, I worked in a busy place? Well, let's add some people, let's add some time, and we can really show all that we've done. So in that, across those 13 patients, were you just kind of doing just about everything that an OT might do?
I actually wrote it down. So I started off in ICU. I had a 22-year-old spinal cord injury at the cervical level, so in his neck from C3 to C4. Then I had a 27-year-old male ortho who was riding his bike and he fractured his leg. Then I went down to cardiac. I had a patient, cardiac. She fainted at a restaurant, so she was having a heart attack. We call it myocardial infarct. I had an oncology patient, a 41-year-old female battling breast cancer, so she's in for weakness. Then I went down, I saw an 83-year-old female who had a CVA, which is another name for a stroke. And then I went down to the ED and I had a 66-year-old who just had a UTI, urinary tract infection. So that was just the morning part of my day. So.
Oh, man. I mean, the amount of, okay, we're going to get into some of our the questions from the students, because the amount of medical knowledge you need to have of how to, handle each person, it seems so different, one to the next. So let's start with this. Alexandria Brooks from Appling County High School said, how can students prepare in high school to become an occupational therapist? And by extension, like, how much different medical knowledge do you need to have to know how to walk into any patient's room and handle their unique situation? Like, what are you having to learn along the way in all your training?
So it's definitely a health science track. So it encompasses, okay, you got your basic anatomy. Medical terminology is still great because you have to read the charts and break down a lot of abbreviations. So physics, statistics. So your basic courses, your math, your science, English. And then like for occupational therapy, we incorporate like specific classes like physical disabilities, cognitive processing. So it's definitely a health track, health science track. So it encompasses a lot. And research. Research is big because we're working on evidence-based practice. So it's a lot.
And what does that mean, evidence-based practice?
So you're taking a research and you're applying it to your patients. So statistics, like outcomes. Like, so if I'm going to do an intervention, I can show that this intervention will improve this patient's deficit like 20%. So you're using the evidence and the research to treat your patients. And that's big in the health field. It's huge.
Yeah, because you want to know that it's been tested and tried and it works before you would put somebody through it.
Exactly.
Thank you for that question from Appling County. We have Tanya Mendez says, can you give an example of how Zumba helps a patient with occupational therapy? That's from from Miss Mendez class in Rockland Boces. Why would you do Zumba?
Okay, so Zumba is like cardio. It's like dancing. So this particular patient is weak. She loves music. So we use music therapy to strengthen her. So instead of doing rote exercises like bicep curls, tricep press, leg kicks, leg slides, we do a total body workout to a song of her choice, and it incorporates everything. So strength, endurance, and we do it from a standing level. So we have balance, dynamic balance as well. And it is definitely a workout.
Are you doing it with them, or are you just kind of standing there guiding them?
Oh no, I definitely do it.
Yeah. So you're getting a workout in the middle of a hectic day anyway. It's like, do you feel fatigue throughout the day? Like, how do you kind of keep yourself going?
No, I'm actually in the process of becoming a Zumba instructor. So I work out when I leave the hospital. So no, I love it.
Wow. So you've still got some gas in the tank even after a long day. We have some other really good questions here. Aaron Lovewell. Thank you, Aaron. How do you deal with emotional patients? Do you have to distance yourself from becoming friends with your patients or becoming attached to them? Mm-hmm. How do you keep like a professional separation from who you're helping?
So that would be a challenge when you're starting off. But in time, you learn that you're invested in their recovery. So you're there to be a motivator. You're there to be a life coach. But more importantly, you're there to be their therapist and move them forward. So it's hard not to get connected to your patients. But at the end of the day, I let them know that I'm invested in your recovery. So, sometimes they need emotional support. So I support them to get them through those crises. But at the same time, we're still going to be focused on the goals that we need to obtain. So that's just time. That just takes time.
Takes to just become a little bit more professional and objective about it and not get too caught up emotionally. That's a fair answer. We have a couple of questions. Again, please continue to put your questions in the Q&A, not the chat. But I do want to recognize Francis Lipton as well as Will C. from Tri-County Regional Vocational Technical High School. They asked a similar question. I'll ask Will's question. Are you scheduled to work with certain patients, or is everything on the fly? Like, do you know at the start of the day who you're going to see, or are you just like bouncing around?
Okay, well, we've changed because we used to be on the fly. So we used to bounce around. So a year ago, we are now localized. There's two therapists. There's a physical therapist and an occupational therapist assigned to a specific unit. So like my unit is oncology. So where we used to be all over the hospital, we're all over the hospital when there's not enough therapists. But more days, like lately we're stationed, so we know what population we're working with now.
Okay.
So that's a good thing.
I have another follow-up question. Again, I want to really draw students' attention to follow-up questions. It's okay to ask about something you want to know more about. So you said there's a physical therapist and an occupational therapist that are together. What is the main difference between physical therapy and occupational therapy?
Okay, so sometimes we overlap, so there's a crossover. So where the physical therapists focus on like your mobility, your ability to walk, and they'll focus on like your strength, your endurance, and your balance. What I tell people, I come in and I take all of that and I connect it to function. So we're still hidden because 9 times out of 10, a patient is not going to get out of the bed unless a therapist sees them because the nurses are, working and they're busy. So sometimes I do physical therapy, but I connect it to a self-care task. So that's the difference. I make the connection.
That makes sense. So you're making it practical and like in the world versus just like working on a muscle group or some kind of therapy. Okay. A good question from Lisa Hartso and her class. Where else can you work as an OT besides a hospital?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh my goodness. You can work in a school setting. You can work in outpatient. You can work in skilled nursing facilities. Some OTs have their own practices like psychology, mental wellness programs. You can work pretty much anywhere. It's yeah.
So it's a very broad field. Again, can everybody please put your questions in the Q&A, not the chat, because it's hard to keep track of them over there. But in the Q&A, I can see.
And community too. You can do community prevention programs as well.
Seems like it's a very versatile job. And tell us again, like how much schooling did it require? Were there exams? Like what are and some of the classes you took in community college? Like what was the actual path like?
Okay, so my pathway in community college was like anatomy, physiology, neuro, psychology classes, phys dis classes. So right, okay, I have a master's degree, so it took me 6 years, but now OT has moved to a doctorate degree. So now in order to become an occupational therapist, you have to get a doctorate. So yeah.
Wow. So that's several years of school.
It is.
So do you get the doctor as the title, like before your name, once you become an OT with a doctorate?
You can, yes.
Okay. Wow. I didn't realize it required that many degrees to be an OT.
That switch just changed 2 years ago.
Okay,
so that's
a national change, like to be certified as an OT. Okay.
Yeah, it's a national change now.
We had a question from Destiny Carroll, Tri-County. How do you calm down patients who are frustrated or overwhelmed?
Okay. Well, when I walk in the room, they're overwhelmed. Just listen to them. Find out what they're frustrated about. I sit down, eye level, I pull up a chair, and I give them like minutes to talk about it and just let them get their frustration out. And they're very appreciative that somebody is listening to their concerns. And then after that, it's go time. It's time to do therapy.
So you have to, I feel like an OT has to have so many different skills, listening skills, people skills, medical skills, psychology skills. Like you have to kind of use everything with patients.
A lot of people don't know this, but occupational therapy originated in psychology. We started in mental health, mental wellness, and we branched off into the phys dis world. So we have a behavioral health unit as well as in our hospital, and I get floated up there as well to do communication classes.
So real quick, what is phys dis?
Phys dis is like physical disability, like a medical, something physical. So
physical disability. And so you say you're also called upon to help people with communication. Now, what does that mean?
So when I go to the behavioral health unit, like communication skills as far as like being not being aggressive, but being assertive. So when we send them back out to the community for them to be able to communicate their needs instead of becoming aggressive. So coping strategies.
Wow. So, I'm really impressed at how many different things you have to know how to do for, under one job title. It's impressive. So we have a question here from Person High School, Roxborough, North Carolina. they said they're having some sound issues, but they want Miss Lemelle to tell us what, if you were talking, you're talking to a lot of high school students right now around the country, or some early college as well. And how can they get started? They want to explore this. Can they intern somewhere? Can they shadow? Like even in your hospital setting, like if a high schooler wanted to get involved, what's available to them?
Okay, we have a shadow program at our hospital. You can just call the patient advocate office or just the main number, and they'll get you in touch with um, our scheduler, and you can come in and shadow. So what we do, you can shadow us for 2 days, all day, 8 hour if you want to, or half a day. So anytime. So you definitely come in and shadow. We don't do internships unless you're a student in a program, an active program.
Okay. But even in high school, so just what does it mean to shadow? Like they just show up, they sign certain forms to,
Yep.
Make it possible. They have to wear certain clothing. And what would a shadow day look like?
So they'll give you a red polo. You show up and you sign forms, like violating HIPAA, forms like that, confidentiality. You come in and they give you a badge and you follow us around, and we introduce you to the patient, and we ask the patient if it's okay that you stay with us and remain available, and you just watch us do what we do for 2 days. And then
How many any teachers out there taking advantage of that in their hometown of like a shadow program? If you've done anything like that, let us know in the chat what you have already done, because maybe you're aware of that, maybe you're not. It doesn't seem that hard to do. You got to just make the phone call and kind of set it in motion. So
just
that
make a
seems
phone
like
call, tell them what you're interested in, and we'll set it up for you.
Thank you. That's great. A question here from a couple of good questions from Michelle Reardon. Thank you for your questions. What does occupational therapy look like in a pediatric setting?
Ooh, I did a clinical rotation in the school system and outpatient. So a lot of sensory integration, a lot of like handwriting skills, communication skills, self-regulation. It just depends on the student that you're working with.
So it's not necessarily a student who has gone through some kind of injury. It might just be life skills and behavioral skills, or just sort of okay.
And intellectual learning disabilities too. Intellectual disabilities.
Wow. I mean,
catching up to their peers.
The amount of skills you have to because every patient's going to come in with their own unique challenge, and you have to just switch your mind and figure out exactly what's going to work for them. Crystal Randolph commented that in Richmond, Virginia, they do internships and job shadowing in all their health programs through Richmond Technical Center. Nice. Although Lisa Hartso says we've not been able to do any observations since March 2020 when COVID started. So has Sentara, the hospital system where you work, have they lifted restrictions? Do they allow shadowing again since COVID?
Yes, I had a student shadow me 2 weeks ago. So yes, we definitely lifted our restrictions. So we have students back.
So I suppose you have to call your own local hospital system. And I imagine, some teachers in here are already well aware of the partners in their community, but you'll have to see locally what's acceptable in terms of COVID restrictions. It seems like every community has their own thing going on. Also, Michelle asked another question, or maybe your students, what is the hardest part about being an OT? What would you say is the toughest part of the job?
Similar to what you said, switching hats, like being flexible, meeting that specific need. It takes time. It takes experience. So yeah, it gets better, but that's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of mental energy, just kind of giving everybody your complete focus and making sure that their experience is the best that it could be. Because of course they're going to go and the hospital's going to ask for their feedback, and they're going to, and I'm sure that your team is, rated. And how does that work actually? Are you evaluated by the hospital, by some sort of outside agency? Like how I've seen, like, we have the best nurses in America by this association rated us this and this. So like, how are you reviewed?
So we do have an outside agency that rated us. It's called HCAP scores. So when a patient is discharged from the hospital, they're given a survey. So it's from 1 to 10. So we get that feedback. So we're definitely rated.
Yeah, like any other occupation, you
our
want good
performance,
reviews.
mhm,
That makes sense.
environment. So yeah.
Um, I want to do a little pop quiz with the students starting now 1 o'clock Eastern. We were talking before about her working in the hospital on the day after Thanksgiving. She said, how many occupational therapists were in the hospital that day? How many? Do you remember the number she said? How many were in the hospital on the day after Thanksgiving? It was a lower number. Thank you, Emma. And how many are usually working in the hospital?
Nice.
Look at that.
Okay.
They're with us, right? Very
Mm-hmm.
good. And I come back to that number because numbers are so important.
Very much so.
If Stephanie had said, "Oh well, there was just a small team of us on Thanksgiving weekend, but usually there's a lot," right? Versus saying there were only 2 and usually there's 8. The difference is enormous when you can actually put numbers to the experience instead of just saying a little and a lot. Because you need the person reading your resume or giving you the interview or whatever it is to really believe that you've worked super hard. Mm-hmm. And the only way they're going to believe you is if you attach your numbers to the experience, and then they're going to know how significant it is. And I think that's a great example of sharing how you overcame a challenge, seeing 13 patients in 9 hours. Yeah, I remember these numbers, right? And then we will hope you all leave today thinking about that example, because it really will help you when you're going out and trying to get opportunities. Stephanie, do you remember your own interview for the job you have right now?
Ooh.
That's a real flashback, right?
Yeah,
what was that like? Hard?
Well,
difficult?
no, it wasn't.
Stressful?
Because, no, it wasn't. It wasn't for me because, fortunately for me, I was already a coda in the hospital, so I was already an occupational therapy assistant. So it was easy for me to just transition to becoming an occupational therapist. So, but yeah, I can't remember my interview.
And do you ever interview people to join your team?
Yes, we sit in on interviews. We do. We
Okay.
do.
And what are some things that you look for when somebody is interviewing with you?
We look for like are they a team player? You know, what are their strengths and weaknesses?
Mm-hmm.
We get them like, if you had this difficult patient, how would you handle that? So we look at coping skills. Yeah, we look at a lot of things.
So I want to ask you something else, because we talk about this in our webinars a lot. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go to the Sentara Hospital website.
Okay.
Okay. And this is the newsroom. So imagine if somebody came in looking for a job and you're in the room and they were talking to you about articles that they read off of this website and showing that they know what Sentara is doing, like breaking ground on this new medical campus or opening 3 new community care programs. Like, they're showing you they've done their homework. They even maybe have a question about it. It may not even be related to occupational therapy, but it's showing like they're really interested in Sentara and they know what's going on. What would you say to that person? How would they look in your eyes?
Oh my goodness, definitely a high candidate that's very invested in becoming a member of our team. Because I don't even take a look at all this. So
I know, yeah, day to day, you're not. But for somebody that wants to prove themselves,
yeah,
what we tell students to do is like think about where you want to work or intern, and then visit their website, go to their news page, read a couple of articles, and when you come in the interview, because sometimes the employer will say, well, have you ever been to our website before? And what you don't want to say is no. You want to say yes, and I was reading about this new $158 million medical campus, or whatever you read about. And that would really show, like you said, it would show that you're really serious. You're not just coming for just another interview with another company, but like you really want to work at Sentara. And it really means something to you. And you've proven it by doing that like extra homework. And so I always want to encourage students, like, do not overlook that part of the process.
Yeah. And I tell you why too, because you had me thinking something when I applied to Sentara. the recruiter said, well, we want to hire you, but you don't have any hospital experience. This is when I was becoming a CNA. And I said, well, I could do the job. So give me an opportunity to get the hospital experience. And in 90 days, if I don't meet the criteria, then that'll be okay. And she said, okay, you start tomorrow.
Wow.
So you definitely want to let them know that you're invested, you can do the job. And yeah, and that's how
Wow. So you were just like, look, like
I could do
throw me out there. If I
it.
sink or swim.
90
And
days.
I love that. That
Mhm.
you basically gave them that idea and you just
Mhm.
like threw it at them. And hey, well, that's what it takes to get in the job. Actually, I have a follow-up question to that from Elizabeth Young,
Okay.
because you mentioned you were a certified nurse's assistant first.
Mhm.
So she said, if I want to explore careers in occupational therapy, what can I do right now as a CNA student? Like, how can they start to make the transition themselves while they're learning about being a CNA to OT? Like, what would you recommend they do?
I would start at the community college level. I would definitely go talk to the occupational therapy program. Let's see. Um, I forget the title they call, but the director of the program. I would go talk to her and then see which courses you need. So I would start at the community college level.
Okay.
Definitely. Mhm.
Okay. Um, that's great. We're going to stay with us, Stephanie. We're going to do one little writing skills exercise. I really want to continue to impress upon students the power of numbers.
Okay.
And so I've shown you a slide right now, everybody. We held a benefit that a lot of people attended, and we raised a great deal of money. We've been talking about this throughout the conversation. What I'd like for you to do, and teachers, you can do this with your class, through your computer, or students can do it on their own if they're at a computer. I want you to rewrite this sentence, and where the words are in red, I want you to put actual numbers. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And I want you to practice numbers with us. I'm sure, Stephanie, you must use numbers all the time when you're doing like a report of a patient. You'd say, we did Zumba for 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying like, we did Zumba for a little while.
No.
And then we did this for a little while. And then they did that a bit. You have to be very specific, right?
Very, very much so. And
Give me some numbers that like would come out of one of your sort of patient reports. What are some numbers that you would have to share?
Okay, so when I'm ambulating a patient and I'm walking a patient, we have to put, I walked the patient to the bathroom. Instead of saying that, I would say, patient walk 15 feet from the bed to the bathroom.
Wow.
And then not only that, okay, did we use a walking device? So did the patient use a cane or a walker? Rate your level of exertion. So we use numbers, a scale from 1 to 10. So you definitely have to add the numbers, because for insurance purposes, that shows their level of progression in order for them to go to the next level of care. So you just can't be vague about it. You definitely have to add numbers.
I love that. I mean, even the number of feet from the bed to the bathroom. I mean, that's how specific you have to be. And these skills are transferable to any career, applying for a job, working in a job. You have to use numbers. You have to be specific. Like you said, it's even for insurance reasons. It protects the hospital.
It does.
Because that can be used against them in a court case or a lawsuit. So it's so important. Can anybody try? I want you to put it in the chat for me. Try to rewrite this sentence. There we go. We held a benefit that 98 people attended, and we raised $20,000. Not bad for 98 people. Let's see a couple more. I really hope that the students understand that if you're not using numbers, the person next to you applying for that same job might be, and they're going to get picked. They're going to get that interview because the employer can actually understand the work that they did, and yours is too vague. Even though you had the same great experience, you didn't share it in a way that they can understand why it matters. And then when you get into a real job, look, healthcare, construction, farming, whatever it is, if you don't use the numbers, you might either lose money, lose business, impact a customer, hurt somebody physically about an accident. This is just the way of the world. So again, please share any other examples if you can in the chat. I'd love to see a few more. Thank you, Cindy. And actually, Cindy, I want you to share that again, because it went just to hosts and panelists. Can you share it again to everyone? make the setting say everyone, or I can do it for you here. I'll just paste it. This was Cindy's, not mine. And Emma B said we had a benefit that 75 people attended. We raised $1,458. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to wrap up. We'll start to head for home. I'm going to share the topics, the little slide I did at the start. Okay. Whoop, wrong one. So again, I mentioned at the beginning, if you missed this, to start, I want to make sure this for the teachers. We have a Google Drive, a free Google Drive folder of activities to help students handle failure. And it's topics like how to respond to an email when you don't get the job or internship, how to reply to somebody that didn't answer you the first time, how to tell your story of overcoming a challenge. Lots of good resources to help show students that failure is part of life, and it's how you get up and bounce back is what really counts. And so that's all for free in Google Drive, and also included as an online presentation checklist, which is a quick document on how to give effective online presentations in case students have those coming up in the second half of the school year. And if you'd like these resources, all you have to do is go to the chat right now, type the word interested and your email address, interested and your email address. This is for the teachers. They'll get it down to the students. And if you're new to our community, never had our content before, we'll send you an invite for tomorrow for a short, very short phone call to pass this content along, help you locate it and share it with your school or school system. Okay, so look out for that invitation on your calendar. If the time does not work, you can just email us back and say, how about this time instead? It's no big deal. Finally, we have our final webinar of the fall semester in 2 weeks. We're talking to a psychologist, 1:30 Eastern time. Please join us then for another health science related conversation. You can also have our webinar resources emailed to you. Just send us an email to the email on the screen. And also everybody today joining us live will get a certificate for being here, a printable certificate that you can send, you share in a portfolio, put in the classroom, whatever you would like to do. So I want to come back to Stephanie just for our sort of wrap up. I want to thank you for being such a great guest, really telling it like it is. And I think, raise your hand, students and teachers. Do you think you learned a lot about being an OT in the last 45 minutes? I think so. I think we all learned a lot about the job, things that many of us may not have known. What would be your sort of words of wisdom to students who are kind of, think about where you were, just curious about this field, didn't even know a whole lot about it yet? What would you say to students who were like, maybe I'll give that a try, maybe I'll look into it? What would you say?
I would definitely say, if you're interested in it, just call your local facilities and just shadow with an OT or an occupational therapy assistant, CODA, OTA, just shadow. And so you can get a feel and see what you think. It's a lot.
Just shadow. All you got to do.
Ask questions.
Because that's the only way you're ever going to know.
That's the only
way. If you like something, you got to try it. And maybe students will say, you know what, I really didn't like that. And that's okay too. Because then it sends them in another direction where they really wanted to. So I love that. And I love how easy it can be, if there's not a COVID restriction, to just, sign the paperwork and be a shadow.
Yep. My daughter shadowed, and now she's in medical school. So she's shadowed.
Congrats to your daughter.
She didn't want to be a PT. She wanted to be a doctor. So she shadowed the doctors. So just shadow.
I love that. That is available to you. It's just how hard do you want to work, right? How hard do you want to push yourself to go out there and get it? Because the opportunities are there if you want to go chase them down. Just a couple of questions. Mac, if you hear me, throw the worksheet link in the chat one more time. And also there was a question about when will the link to the recording be sent out? We're going to get it out. Erica, just shoot us an email. Just respond to one of the emails about the webinar. And when we have it ready this afternoon, we will we can give it to you. We usually send it out on the next morning, so Thursday morning. But send us an email, and if it's ready sooner, we'll get it to you, okay?
And Danny, I'm trying to send the link to everyone. I'm not sure if those participants can see it, but it's saying I'm only able to send it to hosts and panelists.
Hold on a second. Sorry, try again. Zoom continues to create.
All right, there we go.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Everyone should see it now.
Now I realize you never sent it to everybody in the first place, but that's okay. Again, It's 1:15 now Eastern time. Well, the certificate will go out in the morning. Okay, so look out tomorrow morning for the certificate. I want to thank Stephanie again for her time. Let her get back to her busy day. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for being here. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And until then, have a great week and stay warm. And we'll see you soon. Thanks again.